Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
That kid is back on the escalator again.
Pain don't hurt.
Here's my boomstick!
Game over, man. Game over.
Welcome to the Bargain Bin. He is your host, Ben Mason.
And he is your co-host, Sandra Luketic. And today we're talking about 1987's The Stepfather. We assume if you're listening to this episode, you've already seen the film. So, Sandro.
Yes, sir.
What did you think of this film?
I really enjoyed it.
Really?
Yeah.
Seems to be the word of the day.
I thought that it was a very good movie. I was hooked. I was absorbed. I was interested. I wanted to know what was going to happen with the story, and I was quite into some of the characters, which I'm sure we'll discuss.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very surprised that you enjoyed this, because I remember you telling me after you watched the trailer for the movie, you weren't really too confident that you wanted to watch it.
I really didn't want to watch it when I watched the trailer. I dragged my feet on it, and I watched this movie closer to a recording than I've done for any yet, because I was just dragging my feet on it. I don't know if that brought down my expectations so much to a point that I allowed myself to be pleasantly surprised. It might be a factor for sure, but when I think about the movie in a vacuum, I genuinely enjoyed it. So, hey, happy.
Hey, happy?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's almost a cult film at this point. I was just looking at the reviews. It's 6.8 on IMDb. Tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes, it's at 88%. Audience score 65. I don't really know who the target audience for the movie is, though. So I think that's why it took so long to find traction and become a cult classic. It was originally marketed as a suspense thriller when it was released in theaters, and kind of dragged its heels when it came to making any money. So they rebranded it as a horror film, and that's when it really started to pick up. Still, it only pulled in about $2.5 million on a $3 million budget. But it seems like most movies that do that slowly climb the cult classic ladder.
I really can't see this as a horror movie. The thriller moniker definitely fits it a lot more. And
yeah, like a character study.
In regards to making money, I can see how maybe it would have had trouble in the box office, because, like, really, the trailer didn't set me up that great for what I actually got from it.
Mm-hmm.
And
the trailer was like a made-for-TV movie almost.
Yeah, and it was a little bit it was a little bit more vague than what the premise is, right? Because this isn't like a movie with like a whodunit type theme where you don't know who the killer is type thing.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't need to do that sort of kind of mysterious, like, oh, we got to solve this type thing. You know who the villain is right away. You can just advertise it as that.
Yeah.
More of a thriller. And honestly, the trailer didn't get me, but I gotta tell you, man, I was into this movie right from the intro.
Oh, it's perfect title sequence. Perfect music, like the black screen with the red text.
Dude, I wanted to bring up the music, because there is like, kind of like almost like a flute sound in it that adds to the eeriness and the atmosphere. And like, during this intro, right, we have like the kind of the intro splash screens and the kind of details there. And then it goes right to, I don't know what you would call him. I guess Jerry Blake, for purposes of that's the majority of the movie. But
the great Terry O'Quinn.
Terry O'Quinn, like, kind of just deadpan staring into the mirror, completely covered in blood, with that music playing and the fan, or the flute, sorry, and his kind of like dead expression as he's staring into the mirror. Not because he doesn't have the acting chops for it, but because that's what he's going for, like this emotionless, distracted, disengaged type personality. And I'm in right away. And like, you see him walk out of the bathroom there, and he stops to pick up a teddy bear and put it into the toy box. Like, oh, this shouldn't be here. We need order and cleanliness.
Yeah, making sure everything is as it should be.
Before walking down the stairs and seeing this bloodbath in the living room with bodies and, I mean, like, I'm never really a big fan of, like, seeing, like, children dead in movies. And at least we didn't see...
Many people are.
Yeah, and we didn't see a scene where it happens, but it does focus on the little kid laying on the ground and the blood on the other, like, plush teddy bear doll that they have with him, and he just walks out whistling.
Yeah.
And dude,
no.
This intro had me. I'm like, this guy is deranged. He is concerned about a little teddy bear when there's a bloodbath. Like, I don't know if you could have had a better intro for this movie. That's where I was already like, I'm in.
Yeah, and I knew that if that didn't catch you, that you wouldn't enjoy this movie. But like the introduction to his character where he's in the washroom and you just see him like start like cutting off his beard and cutting his hair, unnecessary nudity as he gets into the shower. But then puts himself back together, takes care of the toys in the toy box. And when he goes downstairs and you see that murder scene, it's not just a murder scene. That room is destroyed. Furniture's everywhere, tables are flipped. Like, it was insanely violent, insanely horrific. And he is super calm, does what he does, steps outside, adjusts his tie, and starts whistling down the street. But now, I found out that the whistling, the song, was actually supposed to be Barbra Streisand's The Way We Were, but they couldn't afford the rights to use it. And I think that song would have been perfect.
Maybe that song would have been perfect if they used a song, but I think
they used Camp Down Races.
Pardon?
The song he whistles all the time is Camp Down Races.
Okay, but I don't think that the song matters. I think that if you're diving into the psyche of this character, just the fact that he's whistling all nonchalantly, it doesn't matter what it could be the Saints are marching in, right? Like, just the...
No, you're completely missing the point of wanting that song. It's all about the way things used to be.
No, I get it thematically.
Okay, good.
But if you're just whistling, you're not going to hear the lyrics, and you'd have to delve further into it. In the immediate, when you're watching this scene take place in front of you, just the fact that he's whistling, like this is an everyday occurrence, like he didn't just walk through a horror scene, which is another window into his psyche, because it's not like this guy gets disappointed and then he poisons the family, or he, peacefully kills them in their sleep. Like, this is a bloody massacre. So
he slaughtered them.
As careful as he is when he's planning these alternate lives and manipulating people into buying into him and falling for him, and just like essentially masking his lack of personality, which I think under the surface he's just dead inside.
Yep.
Right? But doing all of that, it's just, I lost my train of thought.
Hey man, he just wanted the perfect family.
Yeah.
And this leads us to the first time we get to see him on the Jerry Ferry.
Sorry, I was just going to point out, what I was going to say is, it goes to show that no matter how smart, planned out, and methodical he is, that when it comes to the actual kill, that is more his impulse. He gets pissed off and he loses it. It's not treated in the same way as his planning and careful approach to actually building these lives.
Yeah, like if I have to describe this movie to somebody, I say it's the story of a man who's having a psychotic breakdown with a yo-yo effect. Like complete control and complete lack of control. And it just goes back and forth.
Honestly, I think it might be Terry O'Quinn's acting that did it for me. Because honestly, the one overarching theme that is going to keep coming back is how good of a job he did.
He's perfect.
But you were going on the Terry Fairy?
Yeah, it's the Jerry Fairy.
Oh, sorry, the Jerry Fairy.
I love the Jerry Fairy, where he just launches his suitcase of his former life into the water.
I also find it kind of weird that, not in this Jerry Fairy scene, but the later ones when he starts realizing that the writing is on the wall and goes to start making a new life, and you can see that there's that crossover where he's making preparations even though he's not finished with the previous one. How, like, he walks into the bathroom to put his disguise on and nobody comments or notices that he walks out a different looking person.
Yeah, like, that's a small nitpick.
It is, but I mean, that's what I got. I'm just saying.
I do like the fact that this movie gives the viewer something out of a rewatch too, because as we'll talk about later, when you see him on the Jerry Ferry, on the ferry, it's because he's going out scouting for his potential next family while he still has his current one. And you don't get that if you're watching this movie for the first time, that like this is his method of, or his mode of transportation that he uses to like scour. So he's obviously been on there before, and now he's back on the ferry heading out to the family that he's already cased.
Well, I mean, there is some level of detail in that when Jim finds the newspaper with the pages ripped out of like I think it was 10, but like the nicest neighborhoods to live in.
Yeah.
That clearly he's got this planned out. He's got it scouted. Like, I'm watching it, and the first time that or not the first time, but when he goes to scout his new life and he introduces himself to the neighbor, and like she's like, oh, it's just me and the kids or whatever. It's like, was that accidental, or did he purposely look for a place next to a single mother type thing? And they don't really go into that detail, but you have to believe that as
that's by far his plan.
Yeah, as methodical as this guy is, you just have to assume that that was all properly scouted.
Yeah, definitely. The character I love it so much because he's so methodical, he's so conniving, he's got everything planned, but he's not infallible in the sense that his plans do have holes in them, and when those holes are exposed, he has a complete, like, violent freak out.
I will say that was a little bit of a nitpick for me. I found it hard to believe that as thorough, as methodical as this guy is, that like he would make a mistake, like when he was pushing the girl on the swing and he calls Stephanie Jill. And it's just like, I can see that you would make that mistake, but you literally said Stephanie 2 sentences ago, right?
That's fine. I took that as showing that he has done this so many times that it's not weighing heavily on his mind. He just assumes he'll always get it right. He's done it so many times that he's just kind of blurring them together now. Hence that one scene where he asks himself, who am I here?
That was a great scene.
I know, right?
But see, I could get that one a lot better. Because at that point in the movie, we're far enough in that he's losing his grip on that family, and he's started building the other life. So there is a bit more detail that's crossing over. Because the point that we're at in the movie when he calls Stephanie by the wrong name, that's already a year into the new life. And while there is the possibility that he's done this countless times before, you know, like, it's when a new year hits. And, you know, you used to be in school and you would write the year out, like, you know, 1998. And it's like, shit, it's 1999 now. And you make that mistake for like the first month. But then after that, you stop making that mistake. I find it hard to believe that a year into the family with Suzanne and Stephanie that he would start making that mistake.
I don't know, man. I forgot how old I was up until my birthday.
That's actually one that goes away with age. As I get older, I lose sight of more and more how old I am. But you can at least see where that thought came from for me. Is that at that point, it's not like this is like, oh, he just finished off the family in the intro and he's just supplemented himself into this family. Yeah. And he's still adjusting. But like, he's had a year of time with this family to kind of build up that habit. Again, I I agree, it's a small nitpick, and I did look past it by kind of telling myself that it's probably meant to show just how many times he's done it, not just the one time before in the intro.
But you're also assuming this is the first time he's made that mistake. It's just the first time that the viewer sees him make the mistake.
Absolutely. But again, I can see how the later mistake, when he calls himself by the wrong name and says, "Who am I here?" that happens because it's a moment of impulse. He's more wound up because he sees that this is falling apart. He's just pushing a girl on the swing in this one. It's very... I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too far into it. I apologize. I just found that a little bit odd for me.
Yeah, you are definitely getting too far into it, but it's okay, buddy. Before we get too far into this, I really want to touch on the theme of the desire for that wholesome family life. Like, everything that Jerry wants is basically a 1960s TV family. And I think that might be why he kind of slipped up when he was pushing the girl on the swing, because that's just a wholesome thing you see fathers do with their kids. And then right after that, it's like him watching Mr. Ed on TV and laughing. And before that, when we first see him, he gives Stephanie the dog. It feels like an actual 60s TV moment, like a wholesome moment where dad gives his daughter a new puppy and the whole happy family goes inside. Like, I don't know. He really seems like a psychotic beaver cleaver.
Oh, absolutely. Can we talk a little bit more about that scene where he gives the dog to the family?
Yeah.
Because this is our first introduction
to...
This is our first introduction into the characters of Suzanne and Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And first of all, this has nothing to do with the actual plot. And again, I'm just being nitpicky. But how did they have so many leaves to rake when the shots in the backyard are almost all evergreen trees that are still covered in leaves? And like, they got baskets of it, but...
No, evergreens don't have leaves.
Sorry, yeah, maybe I shouldn't try to know trees, but you get what I mean. Like, the camera pans, and there's all these green trees that are completely covered.
Yeah,
and
I mean, that's a common flaw in some films when you're trying to set the season. I mean, they filmed this in BC, man. The weather's unpredictable there. They could have just planned it to be a certain look for the season and then find out that nature said, no, go to hell.
That's not actually why I brought it up, but I did just want to nitpick a little.
You never.
Yeah. I found this scene a little bit odd, and it was probably the only time in the movie that I just genuinely didn't like Stephanie. Which is kind of weird, because I already know that Jerry is a killer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, like, we see this scene where she comes home, and her mom is raking, and they're having fun, and they fight in the leaves a little. And she's so distrusting and disliking of Jerry. And it just came off as odd to me. Because us as the viewers don't see anything in the last year that has taken place for her to not trust him. Maybe not like him because it's not her real father. And they don't... Do they talk about what happened to her real father?
I think they mention it. I forget to tell you the truth. But I think it's more of a plot device to give the audience someone to latch onto and cheer for right off the bat. So, like, yeah, we know that Jerry's a killer, but you don't want to have the viewer be like, yeah, Jerry's a killer. These two people are completely lost on that. They have no idea. They're completely in the dark. But, oh, actually, here you go. Here's Stephanie. Here's a character you can identify with because she also knows that something's weird. So you're going to cheer for her. I think that was planned out. I think there was reason behind it.
Like, I definitely started to see, as the movie is moving forward and she sees his reaction to different things that happen, why she would
like
start
wanting to go to boarding school.
Pardon?
That scene where they're around the table, after the whole like him slipping up with the names on the swing set, it's Stephanie, Jerry, and Susan at the dinner table, and Stephanie says she's getting expelled but wants to go to boarding school, and Jerry's reaction is the calm, creepy, collected, "It's not a family without children," and then just gives her this crazy death stare.
See, and stuff like that, it's like, okay, I can see why Stephanie is now hesitant to him. But when you just do that blind, we're just supposed to assume that in the past year there's been reasons or not been reasons for her to be so hesitant or skeptical of him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And again, that faded away because I'm watching the movie obviously chronologically. I don't, right now I'm looking at it in hindsight. But at the time I was like, well, why doesn't she like him? Right? We know why she shouldn't like him. But all we've seen thus far of their relationship is that up until now, he talks to her okay, and he brings her a puppy, and right?
Yeah, but we also get to know more about Stephanie as the movie progresses, and how like she's having a tough time that her father's not around. She's in therapy. She's having a rough time at school. So I don't think we have to fully believe that she's 100% knows that something's up with Jerry. I think her life is so chaotic right now that shoving Jerry into her life when she can't really deal with her father being gone, that's enough of a conflict right there.
See, I actually saw that a little bit differently. I didn't see her fighting to go to boarding school, right? Like, when I say fighting, like getting into the fight with the other student.
Yeah, no. She just wants to get out of everything.
Yeah, I saw that as almost entirely, not because she lost her real father, but almost entirely her wanting to try and find a way to get away from Jerry. Like, she deliberately started that fight so that she could get expelled and have a reason to want to go to boarding school. Because it happens right after the scene where Jerry and her are in the car and he asks her, do you think you could be a little bit better with us and with school? And then right away we go to a scene where she's fighting, where it's like, okay, this is clearly an act of defiance to Jerry, not someone who, and again, maybe it is, but I'm looking at the surface value of a character on screen. This isn't necessarily the real psyche of somebody who has lost a parent. But it really feels like they're focusing more on her desire to get away from Jerry more than dealing with, like, emotions of loss.
Hard disagree on that one. You and I are watching this movie two very different ways. You're looking for what's being put up front and center, and I'm looking for subtext behind it. And I think I did that because before I rewatched the movie, I looked up the writers, and it's Donald Westlake is one of the writers, and he's a prolific crime and mystery author. And then Brian Garfield, who wrote Death Wish, the original novel, and it's all about like subversion of emotion. And I can really see that come through on the screen here. So I'm not really looking exactly at what they're showing, because if you're looking at it that way, what you say about her defiance to Jerry makes perfect sense. I'm actually seeing it more as Jerry being the catalyst for her when she's like, I'm already unhappy with life, and now I've got to deal with this asshole. I want out. Get me away. No one's listening to me. Nobody understands. Just get me away.
Well, the first thing I want to say is I don't think either method of viewing this is wrong.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying how we view this film in a different way.
But I found that, to me, what reinforced that thought was things like the way they do the camera cuts. Like going right from a scene where Jerry asks her, can we get along? Can you do better in school? And then like a hard cut to the middle of a fight that's taking place where she's going to get expelled, right? Like it almost feels like that. I don't know what you would call it. Like that structure to the scenes is meant to reinforce that it is a direct response to Jerry.
I can see how you look at it that way. I don't, but I can see how you would.
Again, I don't think either way is wrong. It just goes to show that this movie has many layers that you can look at it from.
I will agree with you 100% on that. It definitely does. I really think this is a movie that everybody should watch, even if they don't like it, just to see like how a movie should be acted to convey these characters' emotions and tell a really good story.
Oh man!
Speaking of conveying emotion, O'Quinn, his performance as Jerry in the basement when he's having that freak out.
The one during the barbecue?
Yeah, where he's like smashing things in the basement and mumbling about being a good boy.
But see, in that case, you almost even get a feeling of a split personality. Because he's asking and answering questions to himself.
Yep. No, he's, and that's what I say. This is a movie about a man having a psychotic breakdown with a yo-yo effect.
But I don't think that we can stress enough how good of a job Terry O'Quinn did. When he was just at work or showing a house, he's such a charismatic, likable guy. He does such a good job, like during the barbecue, giving a speech and asking for a family photo. Even though, like, maybe it would be a little presumptuous for anybody in that scenario to say, because he's been there a year and he says things like to Stephanie, like, father knows best, right? Like, okay.
Yeah, that's creepy.
It's creepy and it's kind of injecting himself very quickly. But, like, you can see he can portray himself as a family man very well, you know, giving the speech, asking for the photo. Then he goes to the basement. The next scene, and you see him having the psychotic break, and he's doing that fantastic. And even, like, you rewind, there's a scene earlier in the movie where he's having sex with Susan, and Stephanie puts on her headphones to try and not hear it or whatever, and they, like, close up on his face, right? When they're kind of cheek to cheek so she can't see him, and he has no... Stone cold, like, no expression on his face. And it's just like, yeah, this guy is such a chameleon that he is having sex with her and feeling nothing, but he knows that it's part of the dance.
Yep. This is the persona.
There isn't anything that Terry O'Quinn didn't knock out of the park in this role. I don't do awards or anything like that, but back then he should have been considered for, like, a best actor on this one.
Oh, not for the Academy Awards, unfortunately, but yeah, he got nominated for a bunch of awards for this movie.
Yeah, he was absolutely amazing. I know, like I said it earlier, I'll say it again, it's probably going to be a running theme just how good he was in this movie.
We're going to have to start rating acting off of Terry O'Quinn and other reviews.
Can we talk about a negative for a bit?
Yeah, sure. And then I kind of want to go on the scene of Jerry showing Dr. Bonder at the house.
Absolutely. Sure. To me, the weakest part of this movie was the entire Jim inclusion.
Oh, Jim Ogilvy?
Yes.
Yeah, it almost felt like the Jason Hunter from Friday the 13th 4.
It felt very...
Kind of like you horned him in as like, I'm going to hunt him down, I'm going to catch him, I'm going to get my revenge. You're like, all right, Jim, you do your thing, buddy.
Absolutely. And, like, I found that a lot of his scenes, which, again, hindsight, he's ultimately useless in this movie.
Is he ever?
Right? Like, literally, like, obviously spoilers, but anybody we assume has watched this movie. If you boil it down, the entire purpose of every scene that Jim is in is only to build up to the fact that it puts the gun in the house for the final scene. That's it. Yep. Nothing else he does has any bearing on the plot. But it was also, regardless, like, even if he did contribute to that final scene, when I was watching the movie, any of the scenes with him, like, investigating in the library to find the pages in that book, it's like, okay, this is clever writing that he's putting these pieces together, but the scene isn't entertaining. When he's flirting with the one girl, maybe flirting or just trying to charm her to get the list of people who've been married recently, like, these are scenes that I'm just like, okay, like, fast forward, like, move on. They were the weakest to me, and I would have been fine with it if the gun was something that was kept in the house for safety, or it was like her late father's gun that was locked up in a case or something like that, and you omitted the Jim scenes entirely, and I still would have been completely fine with it. I don't think the movie would have suffered at all, unless, and maybe you might address this, he might have been a red herring to make you think that he is going to be vital to the solution.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it was, because really, if that's not it, the gun was a better character than Jim.
Yeah, I mean, like, the actor, like, I don't even want to, like, say, like, oh, the actor wasn't good. He did fine.
He did fine. It was the character.
But the character, like, even though it had no bearing on the plot at the end, even when it was being built up, it was so weak. It contributed so poorly to the flow of the story and the plot. And to be honest, the only part that even stood out to me in any kind of interesting way was the scene with the police chief. And that was the whole reason was because in my mind, I'm like, what police officer would recommend vigilante justice? Just like, oh, yeah, if it's between you and I would get a gun and blow this guy away. And it's just like, I don't know about that. But
is that the law now? We can do this?
Yeah, but I mean, that part stood out to me, good or bad. And then the rest of the scenes, it's like, okay, yeah, I paid attention to them because I knew I was going to be reviewing them. But if I had just watched this movie for the sake of watching it, not to talk about it with you, after the fact, his scenes probably would have just escaped my memory entirely.
Yeah, but for sure. Honestly, whenever I saw them on screen, I was just waiting to get back to Jerry.
Yeah, because with him, there was so many levels, there was so much intrigue that you wanted to see. Like, that's what kept me, one, liking the movie, but two, invested in it. Because I'm like, okay, how are they going to get him? Like, in my mind, I'm like, there's a possibility that this movie doesn't even have a happy ending. I very much could have seen him killing this family and just moving on, and that's how the movie ends.
Yeah, definitely. Like, they could have gone in so many different directions, but I think, and we'll get to it eventually, but I think they picked the best way to go about it. But I do want to talk about Dr. Bondurant.
That guy was a little creepy.
He was creepy, but I think he wasn't supposed to be creepy. He was just supposed to be so careless with his position in people's lives. Like, he really didn't believe anything that Stephanie was saying. And then he would, like, haphazardly agree, okay, I'll try and have a talk with Jerry. And it carries over when Bondurant gets the cold shoulder from Jerry. They won't meet, so he sets up a meeting to view a house. And while walking around the house, he, in his stereotypical Bondurant mannerism, calls the whole happy family, or the family in the happy house thing, all that crap. And again, it just shows Terry O'Quinn's acting. He's immediately furious. And I think it really worked out, because I didn't like Dr. Bondurant at all until I realized this is his purpose. His purpose is to anger everybody around him.
See, I thought his purpose was to die.
Yeah, but it's kind of a link, because I think he was a character that really pushed what I said earlier about Stephanie, how, like, even the people who are paid to listen to her aren't actually listening to her. When he's got lines like, you are a cheerleader for old traditional values, aren't you, Jerry? And, like, this scene really sums up both characters. The carelessness of Bondurant and the strict lifeline of Jerry, when Jerry responds with, tradition is important. Sounds like you had a strict upbringing. You might say that. Let me ask you a question, Ray. Sure. Are you interested in buying a house or in me? And then Bondurant says, sorry, force of habit. My wife gets on me for that all the time, which completely burns him, because he was saying he was single, never married or anything like that, no kids, hence all that crap. I thought it was a really well-written scene. And then we just see Bondurant get the shit kicked out of him with the worst looking rubber 2x4 I've ever seen.
Okay, let me clarify. I was simply expressing expectation versus reality. I thought that Bondurant was gonna die, and I thought that it was necessary to happen to be part of the unwinding of, like, Jerry's, like, plot, like,
he was a necessary character to, like, break Jerry down on screen.
Yeah, and also to help, like, to break this bubble of, like, happy family life that he has as the Blakes, right? Like, it needed to be there. But honestly, like, I was watching the scenes, and you can completely disagree with me here as well, but I got the feeling that he was going to hit on Stephanie, and that Jerry was going to kill him in trying to defend Stephanie, almost in the way that he was saying that, like, the boy, I forget his name, who kissed her goodnight, was, like, practically trying to rape her, right? Like, I thought that was going to be the case, because I got a few creepy vibes from Bondurant and the way he was talking to Stephanie, that in my mind, I'm like, okay, like a normal person might say, okay, he didn't do anything, but you're not seeing him anymore. Whereas Jerry might completely fly off the deep end and to protect his family, quote unquote, kills him, which would obviously be an extreme method of reacting to that. Ultimately, the outcome is the same. He kills him, and it helps to like unveil or unravel his bubble there. But I thought it was going to happen in a different way because I found some of those scenes in the therapist's office kind of creepy.
I just saw him as a human version of a sloth, where he just didn't really care. He was there because he had to be there. I mean, if you're looking for it, I could see creepiness. But I just watched a guy who I was like, this guy is a horrible human being who should not be in a position to try and help people because he's not going to.
I don't know. I think I'd have to rewatch that one because like there was like a creep vibe I got. And I can't put my finger on it exactly. I don't have any quotes in front of me, but I'll have to.
Yeah.
Everybody
should rewatch this movie anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just like I said. I definitely thought that the outcome was going to be the same. I thought it would just happen in a different way.
Yeah. I think it was honestly the perfect setup to the next scene that you were talking about, where Jerry ruins Stephanie's date, claiming that, he was practically raping her. And the mother blames Jerry for ruining the relationship with Stephanie that they had built over the last year. And the next scene is Jerry leaving the real estate company where he was working, and you're like, oh God, like everything has now officially started falling apart. And he's starting the process over again.
Yep. Yeah, as soon as you see him packing up that box, you're like, okay, we're heading to the final act here. Like, it's obviously there's still quite a bit in the movie because they go further in showing you the setup to the new life. Which definitely does help kind of paint a picture of how much this guy has been doing what he's doing. But, like, okay, shit's gonna go down, right?
Yeah. Well, like, even Stephanie going to Bondurant's office and finding out that he had an appointment to meet Jerry, which totally negates Jerry's story that the doctor died in a car accident. And, like, it's basically force-fed to the viewer in that sense. I don't really think we needed that, but at least now we know, she knows exactly what's going on. But I love that scene because it takes us back to the Jerry Ferry.
Yeah, and that's the one where I'm just like, how does nobody see him going in and out of the... Because you have to presume that on the way back on the ferry, he's reversing this disguise, right?
Yeah.
So we see at least 2 trips, but you infer that there's 4 because there's return trips with those. But beyond that, who knows how many more there could be, right? And like, nobody notices this? Nobody finds it odd? Even if they did, what would they really do or say? But it's still one of those, like, it's got to be a better place he could have done it, right? Like, this is a ferry. This is a ferry where you bring your vehicle on, right? He could have even done it like sitting in his car, right? Like, oh, you park it under like the cover and you do it or whatever. But that's just pointless nitpicking. It doesn't take away from the movie at all.
It also leads into probably my favorite Jerry scene in the entire film.
Which is?
And it's in the scene where he's out for a walk and he sees the man pulling into his driveway and his wife and daughter run out and the daughter yells, "Daddy's home." And it cuts to Jerry's face and you just see his face filled with longing. And then as the family's going into the home, little girl turns, sees Jerry and waves to him. And he waves back. And it's almost like not just an acknowledgement to the little girl, but an acknowledgement that what he wants is just out of reach. I thought it was a perfect scene and a perfect shot. I think that was my favorite part of this movie.
Absolutely pointless question to what we're discussing here. Was that the family that he was pushing the girl on the swing?
I think so.
It's not relevant.
But I'm not 100% sure.
Like, the point and the impact is still there to what you're describing. I felt like, is this the family that he sold the house to? Because
way to take the impact out of my scene there, dude.
Well, no, it's still, like, whether that's the family he sold the house to or not, it absolutely is an impactful scene, and it does stand out as a memorable one to me, right?
Yeah.
I was just curious about that. That's all.
Yeah.
Not trying to steal your thunder, man.
It does lead into Jerry calling himself the wrong name.
That scene was fantastic. Because
Yeah.
at that point, you can see just how mentally unstable he has become.
Oh, yeah. Hodgkins, what's to get wrong? What?
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute.
What's to get wrong is the name. But
Who am I here?
why did he quit his job?
Because he'd be missing so much work looking for the new family.
But
Because he was lying to her, saying that he was still working there.
no, I get that. But I'm saying, like, if he was that smart, he could still be working and quit closer to making the transition.
No, but he doesn't make the transition until he has found the family to transition to. He'd be missing all of those days of work as he's going around that however many 100-mile radius looking for those families. You can't miss that many days of work without getting fired.
But you're a real estate agent. Like, that job could have been purposely implemented into the plot because real estate agents are often on the road looking at properties, showing houses that...
Yeah, no, but his company would be the one sending him there. So if they're not sending him there and that's his excuse, sorry, I was working, and they're like, well, we didn't tell you to do that, so you weren't actually working.
Fair, but I mean, like, there's ways around that. I actually
No,
took...
there's not. That's the only way around it.
Guess it depends on what brokerage you work for.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, sure it does. We'll get a real estate agent to correct us.
Okay.
I actually took it as not so much a sign of his poor planning, but panic.
What was a result of his poor planning?
Like, he quit his job earlier than he could have because he was panicked. He was feeling like his back was more against the wall and that he had to move quickly.
Does it state that?
No,
Because I didn't get that vibe at all.
It's a vibe, man. I'm allowed to have what vibes I have.
Okay, no, I just thought I missed something.
No, I'm saying that's what I took it as it was more of a move of panic. Because if you look at the first family, it's presumed that there's another child, but the one that they show is a much younger kid.
Mm-hmm.
Who's maybe not going to catch on to the flaws or the mistakes that he makes as much as someone like Stephanie, who is older, more more free thinking and investigative. So that, she's uncovering my plot. Like, they made no attempt to make it seem like Suzanne was catching on to him at all, right? So you presume that, like, if Stephanie was a young child who wasn't going to catch on to these flaws and these little mistakes, or be at an age where she would give a kiss to a boy and Jerry would freak out, that he would be more successful in his con.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, maybe the last family didn't have the same, like, oh, we caught you. It might have been a more, like, slow burn for the reveal, right? We don't know. And then maybe this one just happened, it was more expedited because of the scenarios that having a troubled teenager getting expelled and into fights and, having the time to mail newspapers. And that is also a good scene, by the way, when he finds the picture of himself in the mail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then has them replaced.
Just to finish my point before that is, crazy how that can work in a movie back then, but in today's day and age, would not work. Because they would have just emailed him a picture. I love watching older movies like that when you're like Home Alone, right? Like, today it would be like, okay, I'm going to pick up my cell phone and FaceTime my family, right?
Yeah, now it's technology solves all of the problems that old movies had to deal with.
Yeah, and the writers have to be a lot more creative, whereas in this, it's like, yeah, he could go to a Xerox place and get a picture of any random person because it's not like she's going to put that picture into the internet and, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's... I find that charming for older movies, but that's besides the point. What was my point? Jesus Christ, why am I doing this today?
Who are we here?
But I guess the idea was that whole, like, I found it as a move of panic, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are grounds to get that assumption for sure. I totally thought he was going to kill the dog, though.
Oh my god, so did I. When he was in the kitchen and he's lost it now and he's chased Susan into the basement and it's like, okay, well now all bets are off.
Yeah.
And he calls the dog over. I was literally like, no, please don't, please don't. And instead he just pets him. And he's like smiling and cheerful with him. And it's like, this guy is so unhinged that in the middle of chasing down this woman with a knife to kill her, can stop to pet the family dog.
Yeah, well, he's the last part of the family that hasn't really turned on him.
Well, it's just like the putting the toy box. Like, it comes full circle. Yep. He puts the toy back in the toy box because there is a purpose and order. There's an idealistic family life that he's going for. And the murdering of the family doesn't seem to get into the way of all the other stuff that surrounds that.
Structure.
Exactly. Right? But in my mind, it's like, okay, this guy's a killer. He's going to kill the dog. And then he doesn't. And you're like, oh, man, this guy, like, he really is all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And then we get pointless nude scene number 2 with Stephanie getting in the shower.
Really made me uncomfortable.
Was she supposed to be, like, 15 in the movie?
16.
16? Yeah. I'm sure that the actress was well more than 16, but yeah, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah, well, I actually like Jill Schoelen's movies. I know how old she is. Like, she would have been 23 at the time.
Oh, man,
but the
23
fact that the
playing
characters...
15.
Sorry?
23 playing 15.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, she was born in 63, and the movie came out in 87, which means it was probably filmed in 86.
I always find it fascinating when you see the ages of people playing, like, younger people, like Saved by the Bell or 21 Jump Street, right? Like, they don't get young actors to play young characters all the time. And
well, look at it this way, man. If Jill Schoelen is 23, Terry O'Quinn is only 11 years older than she is.
Oh.
Yeah, he was 34.
But, I mean, they do a good job, ignoring the nude scene right now, of making her seem of a young age. Like a teen or whatever. But anyway, so she gets into the...
naturally looks young.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she gets in the shower.
And then has what I think is probably the clumsiest fight scene with Jerry. Like,
but him pounding on that bathroom door with the knife.
Oh, and enough so that, like, the mirror is shattering, right?
Yeah, it gets to the shard of glass in the arm.
Yeah. But, I mean, it goes to, like... Again, this is where I'm divided. Like, there's two sides to this. One side of me is like, man, you should be better at this. You've done it before, right? But then the other side of me is like, right, but all of these happen at the points where he's lost his control and he's not thinking, like, methodically and purposefully, and he's sloppy.
Yeah.
But luckily, even though he somehow falls through the ceiling into the bathroom, which I thought was hilarious, because I'm like, no way he's gonna miss but again, he's panicked or whatever. But then luckily we have Jim show up to save the day.
Nobody likes Jim.
I have to focus on it for a second. But when they see each other and Jerry recognizes him and he's like, Jim. And then Jim is, like, trying to pull the gun out of his pocket, and he's shaking it, and it's, like, stuck in his pocket. I'm like, what were you planning? This is horrible. Like, Jim, you are useless.
Oh, Jim.
So after that terrible display by Jim, he's killed, which serves as a body that Stephanie can see on the floor and really have that realization moment, not just that he's chasing her with a knife, but that he is confirmed a murderer.
He is actually going around killing people.
Yeah,
no doubt now.
No doubt now, right? Like, yes, he's chasing me with a knife. His intentions can't be good, but the actual visual of seeing a dead body on the floor it's a slap in the face, like, shit, right? And again, we go back to what we talked about earlier. The only purpose that brings is so that Susan, who, you know, we didn't see again after she was chased into the basement, can find that gun.
Yes.
Finish the job.
The gun's pretty much useless, though.
Well, she can't.
Couple decent shots.
She can't aim worth a damn.
No.
But that makes me wonder, because the first shot she takes, which kind of like gets Jerry off of Steph, right?
Yeah.
Hits him like, what is it, right in the shoulder?
I believe it was shoulder first, yeah.
So I'm like, oh man, she hit him. Must have been luck, because like the next 4 shots, she misses him entirely.
But that does open up the opportunity for Stephanie to just stab him right in the heart.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there was that final shot that I think hit him in the leg.
It was the leg for sure.
So we're lucky that her first and final shot found their target, but the other ones just went astray. And then when he's distracted by getting shot in the leg, that's when Stephanie can stab him.
Take him out.
Yeah. Because he already got stabbed by the shard of glass. He got shot in the shoulder, and he got shot in the leg. So he was really doing a bad job on this.
Oh yeah, he was doing terrible.
Because again, you go back to the intro, and he walked out of that shower completely shaved and whatever without a scratch on him. This one, he would not have walked out that unscathed.
Accurate.
Oh, well, that's the end of the movie then. We do get a little bit of a closing scene with, you know, them cutting down the birdhouse, which I'm sure that the birdhouse that he built is iconic to, again, the ideal symbolic that he's hunting for. But,
kind of a weak ending, though, yeah?
Yeah, I was really expecting something in the end. Even if it was just, like, sequel bait or a tongue-in-cheek type thing or, you know, like a new family buying the house from them type thing. Like, just something. But it's kind of like after the death, you get the treehouse being, or not treehouse, birdhouse being cut down, and then credits.
How much research did you do on this film?
0.
Okay, good. Because
how much research did I do? Good one, buddy. Good one.
I did not see this when it came out. When this movie came out, I was 4 years old.
Okay.
5 years old. We'll go with 5. Going back to me not knowing how old I am. So I knew what would come after this, and that's why I was kind of expecting some sort of better ending that would lead into 1989's Stepfather 2.
I did click on Terry O'Quinn's IMDb and saw that he's in Stepfather 2.
Oh yeah, he's Jerry Blake. He's back at it. After escaping the insane asylum in which he was incarcerated, Jerry Blake impersonates a marriage counselor and manages to win over a patient and her young son. It's not as good as the first one.
He got stabbed in the heart.
Yeah, and shot twice. I hear that takes you to an insane asylum. I don't know.
Now, I can see him surviving the gunshots because they're not into any vital organs, but he got stabbed in the heart.
That's not vital.
No, not at all.
They did do a third movie as well, eh?
It can't be the same. Like, it can't be Jerry Blake again, can it?
No, it's not. It's not, no.
Does he use Jerry Blake in the second one?
Yep.
But that's only one of his personas.
Yeah, he also goes by Gene Clifford.
Huh. But you say it's not as good.
It is not as good. It's a lot campier. I really enjoy it. But if you're comparing part 2 to part 1, part 1 is so much better. And it's so much better than the remake from 2009.
Oh, they did a remake too?
Yeah, with Dylan Walsh as David Harris instead of Jerry Blake.
Essentially the same plot?
Oh, yeah. And this time, the Stephanie character is actually called Kelly Porter, played by Amber Heard.
To be honest, I don't know what the remake is like, but this is definitely a scenario where I would recommend the original.
I would recommend the original as well. The remake, it's not bad, but the source material is just way too good. There's no way of redoing it the same way that they did in '87.
They set the bar very high.
Yeah. It's personal, too. One of the screenwriters, Donald Westlake, I told you about him before, based the character of Stephanie off his actual stepdaughter, who he was having problems getting along with in the new marriage.
That's a little weird if you look at the ultimate outcome, but okay.
Yep, right. You want to take a couple of minutes and just talk about the actors?
I mean, I think I've said what I've had to, but by all means, go ahead. I'll jump in if I think of anything.
Yeah, I just feel like we should at least reference some of the other stuff they've done. Some of it I don't know, some of it I do. Like Stephen Shelley, who played Jim Ogilvy. I did recognize him from 2 TV shows, and that was it. He played Luke Brenner in Counter-Strike, a TV show from the 90s, as well as the 1990s version of Nikita. He played Marco. So he was definitely the 80s, 90s guy and just kind of disappeared from that point on. But until he was... did you ever play the Deus Ex Human Revolution game?
Yes, I did.
He played a character called David Seraph.
Oh, so the bad guy.
Oh, okay, there you go. Let's see.
I definitely think he was meant to be kind of more like the eye candy in the movie. Like, the actor is a relatively good-looking guy, and I can't think of any other reason other than being a red herring that he would be in the movie.
Yeah. Then we got Shelley Hack as Susan. I only recognized her as Anne from Troll, but apparently she was in later seasons of Charlie's Angels. Jill Schoelen, I thought, was perfect as Stephanie in this movie. I know her from 2 other horror films, 2 of my favorite horror films, really campy. She was Maggie in Popcorn and Paula Carson in Cutting Class. I don't think you've seen Cutting Class, but it's a pretty fun high school slasher film. Her boyfriend in the movie is played by Brad Pitt, and the creepy, pervy principal is played by Roddy McDowell, and he's great in everything. But let's really talk about... I know you've seen Terry O'Quinn in other things before. Can you think of anything you've seen him in? Really?
Really?
You haven't seen Silver Bullet, have you? With Corey Haim and Gary Busey?
No, sir.
All right, he played the sheriff in that. Have you seen the action western Young Guns with Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen? Okay, he played Alex McSween in that. Okay, I see where this is going. Have you seen The Rocketeer?
I saw that when I was a kid, and I couldn't remember. I couldn't tell you the first thing about it, really. I saw it when I was like 6 or 7.
Okay, well, he played Howard Hughes. What about Tombstone? Have you seen Tombstone? Kurt Russell, Western? Mayor Clum. Okay, fine. Have you watched Millennium, the TV show? Okay. Oh, he played Lance Henriksen's boss, Peter Watts, in that show.
What am I doing here?
Did you ever watch an episode of Lost?
Nope.
Okay, we played John Locke, one of the leads in that. You suck, man.
This isn't about me.
Yeah, good, because it'd just be like, What do you think of the Jerry Fairy?
Are you done? Are you finished?
Fine, I'm done.
All right, any other actors you want to highlight?
No, I just want to talk about those 4 for now. Because I think even though some of them weren't really in the film as much as others, they all kind of added a little bit to it in their own way. I just thought we should talk about what they've previously done. If people like them in this movie, check out some of their other work.
I will add this. With what you said, I agree. Some of them had more minor roles, like Suzanne.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that all of them did their job fantastically. I don't have a complaint. Like, even when I jump into a character like Jim, I don't think that the actor did a bad job by any means. I just think that the material for that character wasn't up to par. All of the actors in this movie, I think, were quite good. Maybe the boyfriend who kisses Stephanie, who's barely in it, was a little bit overacty. But that's it. Any of the important characters were done very well.
I agree.
All right, why don't we get to our final thoughts, Ben? Just in case anybody isn't sure yet, do you recommend this movie?
100% I recommend this movie. It's a classic 1987 movie, which was a great, great year for cult classic films. If you take a look at the list of movies that came out in 87, there's so many hits there. A lot of people don't seem to remember The Stepfather, and I see that as like a really sad fact. There is so much going for this movie that every time I've recommended it to somebody, they've always come back super happy with the recommendation. And honestly, I thought you were going to be the first person that told me this movie was bad.
Not a chance, buddy. Not a chance.
It's so much better than you expect it to be. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Let me tell you what I think.
No, please do.
I would recommend this movie to any and everybody. Doesn't matter what genre they like, what type of movie they like, what era they like. I can see anybody sitting down and enjoying this movie, even if it's not their usual type of movie. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that I wouldn't recommend is watching the trailer first.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's definitely a misrepresentation of what the movie's really about.
And I want to close off by bringing up one very important point here.
Sure.
You and I are on the complete opposite spectrum of movie viewers.
Yes.
You've seen it all. I've barely seen anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we both love this movie, which means that anybody in between can enjoy this movie. It does not matter how much of a fan of movies you are. There are things to enjoy in this film.
Yes, there are. Honestly, I would give this movie 5 out of 5 Jerry Fairies.
You just wanted to say Jerry Fairies again before this was done.
It rhymes.
All right, buddy. So, there's one last thing to address, and that question is the ever-popular, what are we watching next week?
Next week, we are watching 2020's Fat Man.
I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've lost my influence. Maybe it's time I retired the coat.
You still have it.
Some kids with a deer rifle put 2 holes in the sleigh, one in me. All I have is a loathing for a world that's forgotten.
The United States military would like to procure your services.
This is a one-time deal, gentlemen. How are you, Mike? Nicole and the kids are well, I hope.
Where are you?
You just lost a big son!
What's the job?
I'd like you to kill Santa Claus.
I'm looking for the Fat Man. You can't be serious.
This is what people actually think of me. Christmas is a farce. I am a joke.
What's the purpose of your visit?
Hunting. I'm gonna kill some things.
There is a rising number of our youth making poor decisions.
What the big man's head?
Severed heads rot, they mold.
They don't want his beard.
I'm not shaving off a dead man's beard.
Your workers sure have healthy appetites.
That's why elves live much longer than humans.
And Chris, he does the same?
No, it's a giving that keeps him young.
I've come for your head, Fat Man!
Dashing through the snow, no one horse open sleigh.
You think you're the first?
All the fields we go,
Think I got this job because I'm fat and jolly?
laughing all the way. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
How come while you sleep? The Fat Man's got his eye on you, kid.
Hey, whoa!
Oh, that's Donner. Lucky it wasn't Blitzer. Should tear your package clean off.
That is going to be the newest movie we've watched.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, I'm looking forward to it. Until next
too, buddy.
week, have a great one.
All the best, guys.